This is the Mental Metal Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Toman. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Metal Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. Welcome back, Metalheads. Welcome to the Mental Metal Podcast. I am your host, Coach Matt Toman, and I am excited about today's episode, and I'm glad you're here. Before we go any further, I just want to get out there that, hey, if you are enjoying this podcast, don't keep it a secret. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share it. My goal is to get this stuff out to as many people as possible. I believe that anytime we promote mental toughness and people thriving in athletics, it's good for all of us. Nothing here is trade secrets for you and your team. I love sharing information with people. I want as many people to hear it as possible. So please do me a favor, hit that like, hit that share, promote it, promote the normalcy of focusing on mental health and athletics. That's it's something I see some people struggle with. I have, believe it or not, I have parents reach out to me, want to hire me, want to have me work with their kids, but due to, I guess, stigma, culture, things like that, they see talking to somebody about their struggles in mentality, they see that and don't even want to meet with somebody. And I think the more that we can share stuff like this and share what I'm doing, it doesn't have to be me, but the more that we make it normal, the more likely we're going to be able to help kids. Because that's the worst to me is, and it's not even about the business. It's about knowing a parent that sees a kid that struggles and wants they want help for their kid, and the kid won't even get on a Zoom call with me. And hey, I'm a nice guy and I'm fun to talk to, but I can't even get them to that first call. So I think that the more we share stuff and the more we make it normal, the more it's just going to help. And also remember to check out my sponsors. You'll see Quick Cut in there. Quick Cut is a great video tool for coaches. I used it when I was coaching. I love their system. I liked it better than Huddle, and it's a lot cheaper than Huddle. So they've got some promo codes in there that you can use if you're a coach. Look into that. And also just, I sponsor this podcast with my own business, Mental Metal Coaching. I work with individual athletes, as I talk about all the time, but I work with teams. I do professional development with educators. I'm getting really busy this time of year in August as schools come back. I do professional development training for, as coaching for educators as well. And I've worked with businesses. So if you're interested in hearing me talk or hearing me do some things like that, hit me up, see what we can do. And on that, you will hear a commercial in this podcast. I have a free webinar coming up for parents. It's on August 28th at 7:00 Central, and it is called How to Use Praise to Raise Mentally Tough Kids. And it's a guide for parents. It's a lot of the stuff that I've worked with things I've learned from, my coaching certification, the reading I'm doing, working with so many athletes and so many teams. I've learned so much from all the athletes that I'm working with and just the things I can do there to help. And I want to share some of that information. And I said, it is a free webinar. Now, I'm going to be honest. I have done webinars in the past, and my experience is when I charge money, I get more people there. They think that if you pay for something, it's got to be better. I've done webinars a few times, and I usually get more, it's counterintuitive. And you're going to say, why would I do that then? But when I charge money, I get more people there than I do for a free one. And it talks into the psychology of what people think and what they think they're paying for. I'm telling you, it's the same guy. It's the same information. I really want to put this on. I think this is really good stuff on how to use praise to raise mentally tough kids. We love to complain about all of the things that cause the lack of mental toughness. We're talking about social media. We talk about, just the pandemic and all these things. We love to say that these are issues, but I can't do anything about that. But what I can do is help you, the parents, use your voice in the right way to help your kid develop mental toughness. That's something I can do, and I want this to get out there for as many people as possible. So check out that webinar that's coming up August 28th, 7 o'clock Central. You'll see in the show notes that there's a link there that you can do that. And I hope I hope I have a problem that there's too many people there. I don't think, that would be fantastic, but I'll keep doing them if people keep showing up. So be sure to check it out. Now let's get into today's episode. And the topic today is, we're really going to dive into, you're going to hear us say quite a bit in the interview, is about the difference between old school and new school. And so what is old school when it comes to athletics, and specifically like coaching, athletic coaching for basketball, baseball, things like that? What is old school? Well, old school we kind of see as the traditional systems, the traditional ways that things were done. I keep thinking of, when I think of basketball coaches, I'm thinking of guys like Mike Krzyzewski, Bobby Knight, these very military type guys that are very disciplinarian, run a very tight ship, and very authoritarian with their athletes. And honestly, I think a lot of my growing up, that was my experience. A lot of the coaches I worked with were very disciplinary, in the Midwest and Illinois and stuff like that. You weren't that far from Indiana, and it was like, Bobby Knight's having success, so this must be the way to do it. And I'm not Bobby Knight was a great coach, but that's kind of what I experienced a lot. And I do know that I remember in high school, at one point, we went from my high school, it was a small high school, but we had a very disciplinarian type coaches. That was, like I said, there's a norm. And at one point we switched, and we had a coach came in that you would call a player's coach, in the sense that he kind of did, our practices were run in a way that they were fun, and we'd run and we played a newer style. You would call it very new school. And it didn't go overly well, but I don't think it's because that he was a player's coach, or, new school versus old school, because you can be good at either one. You can have good coaches that are old school and good coaches that are new school, and you have bad coaches that are old school. But I do think that he didn't get nearly as much leeway. So I do think that a lot of times adults, community and stuff like that, well, even if you're not getting wins and getting results or something like that, it's like, well, at least he's got the boys in line. And I think that that's part of the old school mentality, is just making sure that they have to be in line and doing things a certain way. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. I do think that the game has changed a little bit in the last, 20, 30 years. I know it's changed quite a bit. And I think some of the attitudes with that have changed. I mean, when you talk about the changes in the basketball game, because my guest today is a basketball coach, it's, more threes. It's some schools are like, it's either a three or a layup, just as a metrics idea. And then, of course, it's more player focused than it used to be. I think that that's come in a lot with, it's even gotten into college. Of course, pros is that way. It has to be because of the making all the money. But I think it's gone down into the college ranks with the scholarships and the NIL. Players have more of they just have more power and more authority in their situation. And I think it's starting to creep down, that at least that mindset is going down into lower levels, down into high school. And it just changes the entire process and the way it's looked or the way it's operated. And again, not all that is good, but I don't think all of it's bad either. I think that it's changed the way some coaches have to run their practices, maybe less authoritarian. They have to garner the respect rather than just get it, automatically. I've had a lot of coaches talk about this on the podcast, and some more coming up. They mentioned that practices need to be less of that cookie cutter. I think that I could have told you, like, every practice I had going through high school and really into college, they all fit almost the same design. I could tell you, it was the warm up, then we did drills, and then we worked on defense, and then we did some practice, did situational, and we worked on some offense. But then, towards the end, we might get some live stuff. But by the time, that was just, oh, well, that was whenever everybody likes to play a little live, so we'll do that. But I think that's changed a little bit, and you'll see that with the guest I have today. And I think I love the scene. It reminds me of the scene from Hoosiers. If you remember when Coach Norman Dale comes into practice, his first day of practice, and the dad coach, or, the guy who was there, was just the intern, was talking about the schedule. And he said, I thought we'd play 20 on, 10 off, 20 on. And Norman Dale his response was, I think I had a different schedule in mind. And that idea was, oh, well, it needs to be stringent. It needs to be set up this way, and it has to be very scheduled. And he did. They showed him going through the drills around the chairs and doing all these passing drills. And again, there's a time and a place for that, because I'm not advocating one way or the other. I think that as a coach, you want to do what's best for you and for your kids. You can succeed as an old school and you can succeed as a new school, but I don't think that you can fail at either one as well. I don't think you need to say, I'm this way and I'm that way. I think that it's finding what works well for you. But in our episode today, we're definitely going to talk about those ideas a little bit and how you can mix them. And I think that's why my guest today is such a great interview for this. He is a former player, played some very successful high school basketball and college basketball. And he prides himself now as a coach with some of the newer ideas. He likes to work stuff in and do things a little bit differently. And what makes him really interesting is he coaches as an assistant at a high school level at a very successful high school under a guy who's a pretty old school guy. So they've got this mix working together. And so the school and my guest, his name's Justin Dehm. He's the assistant coach for the state champion Metamora Redbirds. They're Metamora Redbirds. Whew. They are 3A state champions this last year, and they were runners up the year before, and they've got a good squad coming in this year. And he coaches under the head coach, Danny Greaves, who's a highly successful coach, but he's definitely an old school type guy. And I think that Justin's take on a lot of this is going to be very, very interesting and just worth listening to, because he's talking about how he's been able to intertwine some new school ideas with some old school ideas. And Justin's been a good friend of mine, or, he's been for several years now. I've got to know him because we worked in a lot of the same, or, around basketball in the same circles in the summers. He coached my son at a young age in the summers. And then he was also my son's last AAU coach. He's a very controlled, very calm, but also very purposeful and very intentional coach, which is why I really wanted to have him on here. And in this story, you're going to hear a lot about how he came up playing basketball, what he's learned. He's clearly, so when I say new school, I do think that a lot of people are like, well, that means he's not tough and he's not hard on kids and he doesn't, but that's what is so cool about this. And what I want to get into this is that Coach Dehm is a very mentally tough kid, or was a mentally tough kid when he was playing, and now he's a very mentally driven individual. So when we talk about these new school ideas, it doesn't mean he's soft. Quite the contrary. Coach Dehm has a lot of expectations. He makes his kid work, and he just doesn't do it in this loud, overly authoritarian, disciplinary way. And he's got some cool ideas that you're going to hear in this interview. And also, today's episode is going to be part 1 with Coach Dehm. Honestly, he and I got talking, and we ran a little long in between talking about his background, some of his ideas, what he's doing with Metamora, and then some of that, just a really interesting story on the last 2 years and what they've developed and what they've gotten better at and things like that. And by the time you got my intro and my breakdown, it was going to be probably over a 2-hour episode. And it came to my attention. And, basically, I don't think that everybody has 2 hours of their life each week to devote to me talking about mental toughness. And I'm okay with that. I'm hurt by a little bit, but I'll be okay. But regardless, I wanted to be respectful to everybody, and just, I think it works well if we just keep the episodes, certainly less than 2 hours. So that's my goal here. You're going to hear, this is part 1 of the interview. I'll catch after a couple segments of this interview, and I'll, break a little bit of a breakdown on the first 2, but then next week we'll have part 2. And regardless, I hope you enjoy it. I'll catch you on the other side, and enjoy the interview with Metamora Redbirds state champion 3A basketball assistant coach Justin Dehm. The Mental Metal Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. Less than 1% of high school athletes ever become professional athletes. But as parents, we invest in their athletic pursuits because we know it's worth it. Sports build vital life skills. Confidence, perseverance, and the joy they bring are invaluable lessons from sports. But what if your athlete is facing the other side? What if anxiety, apathy, and sorrow have replaced the joy? Well, I can help. My name is Matt Toman, and I am a certified mental coach. And I understand the challenges young athletes face. I've seen mental coaching transform the mindset of many young athletes. It's not about turning them into pros, but nurturing their inner strength for sports and for life. At Mental Metal Coaching, we offer virtual sessions to help them tackle challenges, build confidence, and rediscover the joy of sports. Every young athlete deserves to thrive. Mental Metal Coaching, facing adversity with a smile. So we are back with my guest today, Coach Justin Dehm, and agreeing to come here on the Mental Metal Podcast with me. And a little bit of the bio here before I let him get going here. I know Coach Dehm because he just doing from summer stuff and some AAU stuff. He coached my son a year with the Mid Pro Academy, but I also knew him from some other summer stuff that just being in the same area and then running in the same circles. So I've known Coach Dehm for years, and but he's got an impressive background in the sport of basketball. He played with in high school, played with Peoria Richwoods High School, and he helped them get to 4 regional championships, 2 sectional championships, a state runner-up finish. We'll talk about that. Getting that second place trophy. You've got experience on as a coach and a player is getting that. And then Coach Dehm continued his playing career at Furman, Division I school. I've got here career 1,050 career points and second all time for the school, and with 214 three-pointers. So Coach Dehm's a shooter. And after his college career, he served a little bit of time there at Perman as their director of basketball operations before coming back to Central Illinois and joining up and working at Metamora High School. And he's been there 10 years, 2 years as a sophomore coach and 8 years as a assistant under Danny Greaves. And we'll talk about that relationship quite a bit here today. And lately, Metamora has been on a tear, doing really, really well. Under his time there in the 10 years, he's helped them to 4 Mid-Illini Conference championships, which that means 40% of the time you're there, you're winning a conference championship at the Mid-Illini, which is no small feat. 4 regional titles, 3 sectional titles, 2 state tournament appearances. 2022, you got that runner-up, and then you made it right this year in 2023 and got the state championship for the Redbirds. So quite a quick, a pretty good career. Fairly young in the sport. You just went into, college in 2007 was it? So man, you've been tearing it up, Coach, and I'm pleased to have you here. And the central question today that we're really going to get into this, the difference between old school and new school and how mental toughness has changed, and we'll answer some questions around that. But first off, Coach, just welcome.
Thanks, Matt. It's great being here. I've listened to all your podcasts. I really love what you're doing. I'm kind of addicted to podcasts in all different styles right now, but I've been enjoying yours, especially the Chris Lowry one. Last week was really good. He was the head coach at Southern when I was growing up, when I was in high school, and they recruited me quite a bit, so I watched them a lot, and I really loved the Saluki style of basketball. It was hard-nosed, defensive type. I remember when Brian Mullins was their point guard. He's the head coach now, but I thought that was really, really cool, so I'm excited to be here.
That's awesome. When I started putting a podcast together, I thought, well, who's my audience going to be? And I'm like, well, I know coaches are podcast junkies, so at least I was when I was coaching. Just they're information junkies, and so anytime you can hear somebody else's voice, they love it. So, tell me a little bit about, I want to talk about, because you've got 2 avenues I want to go into and talking to you. First, I would love to I want to talk about your experience as an assistant coach with the Metamora Redbirds. And honestly, people would be like, well, why not get the head coach? And I think that the assistant coach has such a great perspective on the mental health of players, because sometimes I've been an assistant coach on a team that went on a state run, and I know sometimes the assistant coach job is to pick up the pieces. So I think that's a really, really good avenue to go down. But before we get into that, man, you also you were a very successful high school player that had a very successful Division I career. So a lot of what you probably teach about mental toughness is stuff you had to learn on your own. So what I'd love to know is give me some experiences for you in Division I athletics and what you had to overcome, what you had to learn as far as mental toughness.
Okay. I've been truly blessed to have so many great opportunities in my life through the game of basketball. It's taken me all over the country, and it's given me some really valuable experiences, and I've learned a ton about life and about people along the way. I can think of a few things, right off the bat. Probably the toughest thing mentally about playing college basketball, especially the Division I level, is there's always somebody coming for your spot. It's not like high school where it's, by the time I got to being a junior in high school, I knew I was either the leading scorer or the second leading scorer every game with the team that we had. We had two Division I recruits on our team, but nobody was ever gonna outplay me in practice and take my spot that week. Over a month of time, I lose my spot because I'm just not playing as well. There was nobody to really push you in the same way that in college. I was on the all-freshman team. After a really good freshman year, I was second on the team in scoring by 2 total points, not points per game. Like, if I'd have made one more 3 that year, I'd have led us in scoring. And then my sophomore year, I started off the first 5 or 6 games, I came off the bench because coaches, I guess, had thought that other players had progressed more in the offseason, had gotten a little bit stronger, had improved their skill set, whereas I was kind of more the closer to my ceiling, didn't have as much potential to get a ton better in college, being 6 foot, 6'1", other guys that are 6'3", longer arms, better athletes that maybe made a big jump between their freshman, sophomore, junior year, and coaches wanted to put more athleticism on the floor, and so just having to work through that. Hey, I was one of our top 2 scorers last year. Why am I coming off the bench? Hey, I'm the best shooter on the team. Why am I coming off the bench? Having to figure out what your weaknesses are and work on those things every day in practice, and have somebody that you're constantly fighting for playing time every practice, every single game. Just the pressure that comes with that. You have to be really in a good place mentally to deal with that. Because I could have easily folded and transferred after 2 years and not been happy and blamed it on the coaches. And instead, I had good coaches in my side. I had family behind me that could help me through it, that could talk me through it, and found ways to get around that. And obviously injuries lead to opening up more opportunities for you along the way. One of the other guards that was ahead of me that year tore his ACL, and that obviously opened the door for me to play a lot more after those first 6 or 7 games of the season. But it was a constant struggle. My junior year, half the season I was starting, and then half the season I was coming off the bench. And then my senior year, after I'd probably started 60 to 80 games in my career to that point, freshman, sophomore, junior year, my entire senior season I came off the bench. I was kind of a sixth man role. We had brought in a transfer from South Florida who had really helped us take our team to the next level. We went from a 500 team to 22-11 my senior year. A lot of it was because of this guy that we brought in, a Musaka transfer from South Florida, that helped our team out a lot. 6'6" wing that could post, that could shoot, that could handle. So just little things like that you don't really think about going into college, like having to battle for your spot every single year, every single practice. It's tough on you mentally.
Yeah, and what's really interesting when I hear that, when you're able to look back at it, we're talking about a college career that had you scoring over 1,000 points, right? Which is no small feat. But you did probably most of that, or at least half and half, coming off the bench.
Mm-hmm. My freshman year was my best scoring season, so it was kind of down a little bit each year. I was 10 points, and then I was 9, and then I was 8, and then I was 6. But my senior year, we had 2,000-point scorers. The other one was Jordan Miller, who was from Memphis, and he started, and I was coming off the bench, and we had a guy who played 2 years who scored 500, so pretty much a 1,000-point scorer there at the same time. So I was the one coming off the bench. So dealing with that at 21, 22 is not easy.
So absolutely not. It's really hard, especially you. It's like you were talking about when you come from high school and you're I'm him, right? I'm the guy. I'm that guy, and then to have it, and then it started that way for you in your freshman year, and then to have it kind of, like you said, kind of wane a little bit. How what did you draw on at the time? It's easy for us to look at it now and you're like, hey, I was able to do that. But I guarantee it wasn't that easy every day. What were you able to draw on to be able to get through that and have that be a positive experience for you?
I think I just kind of internalized it a lot and used it as motivation to get better. There's a reason why they're not seeing me as one of the top 5 right now. What do I need to do? And just spending more time. I would get done with class, say 11 o'clock, whatever it was, go pick up lunch from the dining hall, eat some lunch, go over to the gym, and then just kind of prepare myself for practice earlier than everybody else. I'm stretching out, I'm getting shots up on the gun. I'm just trying to make sure that my preparation and my work ethic is second to none, so that when my chance does come and when I do get the opportunity, I'm able to do something with it.
Well, versus just saying, "Hey, coach just doesn't like me."
Right.
Right. What am I going to do?
That was the initial reaction, I think, at first, and then it was like, okay, well, the coach wants to win. He's going to put the best players that help him. And my struggle was probably defensively guarding the ball. So I tried to figure out what I had to do to get better, to get quicker laterally, to get more flexible, to be able to move better on defense. Doing things like starting doing yoga after my sophomore year of college, I think helped me out a lot, and just focusing on the defensive end of the floor as much as I could, and guarding the ball and not getting beat off the dribble, and focusing on, what could be my strength. That would be my IQ on the floor, being in the right spots, because maybe 20% of the time you're guarding the ball. There's one ball and there's five guys. So most of the time on defense is spent off the ball, being in help position, being in the right position, rotating to take charges, boxing out, doing all the little things are what I had to really focus on.
Yeah, and what I loved in that, what you said was I had to find out what did I need to get better at, right? And that to me just really shows that growth mindset that you had to have, but it also mean, like, how did you go find out what you needed to get better at? Like, where'd the idea of yoga come in? Because we're not, most high school kids aren't doing that, right? To do, like, where'd you get that idea, and how'd you go find out what you needed to get better at?
I think I just saw that a lot of NBA players had been doing it, and I'd known that a lot of football players started doing it, especially linemen. They started having them doing yoga and ballet and stuff like that for their footwork and flexibility, and just being able to bend better and sit lower. And I think that's kind of where it came from, just players that I looked up to in the NBA and NFL doing it, and I thought this would probably be a good idea. I tried to bring some of my teammates along. They lasted 1 or 2 sessions, and then they quit doing it, but I loved the feeling that it gave me after I was done, and sticking with it over a few weeks, I started to see some of the results start to pay off. And I still do yoga to this day. I absolutely love it. We take our team every fall to a yoga studio in Peoria Heights, and we go once a week for about 5 or 6 weeks.
Wow, I mean, that was going to be my next question, is that, do you still practice it? And it's love that you do. So before we get anything else, we can just shut down the podcast. If you want to win a state championship, just have your team go do yoga, right?
If only it was that easy. You got to have several guys over 6'5". You got to have some guys that really shoot it, handle pressure, guard.
But we joke, but there are other things to be done that seem like they're out of, well, we're doing the old school, new school, right? Like, you would not have done yoga when I was going through high school or college. We didn't do that. Like, it would be like, well, that's a waste of time, right?
Yeah. I mean, people still laugh when I tell them how much yoga we do, or I do, or that our team is going to do yoga. They kind of look at us sideways, and I'm like, just give it a chance. I mean, shoot, yoga can help you just from a mental aspect. I mean, some of the poses, especially for males that are maybe not the most flexible, to get into some of these positions and to hold these positions for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then you're flowing into another one, but you got to go right back into that position again here in a second. It's tough. I mean, I've seen a lot of our kids tap out. They got to stand over in the corner and take a break, because it's pretty tough. I mean, it challenges you mentally and physically. Especially sometimes she'll put us in she'll turn the heat up, and it turns into 105 degrees, and you're dripping sweat, and you just want to, God, when is this thing going to be over? I'm ready to go home.
So I've done some yoga. I have never done yoga well. I'll put it that way, but that's not the point, right? It's about progress. You don't have to be the best at it to be doing it, and you don't have to be the best at it to get a benefit from it.
Right.
So, right. I just love that. I love that you're doing different things, and that you figured that out in college, and that, like, it's one of the first things you mention when I say, "What do you need to get better at?" And you're like, "Oh, I started doing yoga," which is not. It's not the normal, right? It's a different. And what I really got into, and you did most of it because it was all about the defense. And I think I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, you've done some AAU coaching before, and you've worked with a lot of high-level kids. And offense is, they love off. Everybody loves offense. Mm-hmm. But talk about that mentality that you have to develop as you go into college defensively, and how you're not ready for it.
Yeah, that's one of the things about coaching, right? For basketball, it's not like football where you can, hey, I'm a quarterback, I don't play defense. I'm the running back, I can't get hurt. I don't need to take chances, tackling people on defensive end or special teams. In basketball, you got to play both ends. It's back and forth. Half the game is defense, half the game is offense. You can try to tell kids, especially our high school guys right now who are looking to get recruited, like, you can open coaches' eyes on the defensive end of the floor. If you're active, if you're talking on defense, if you're a really good rebounder, if you can guard the ball, you're in help positions, college coaches can see that. College coaches want guys who can get stops because 50% of the game is defense. You're trying to outscore the other team to win the game, but the other way to look at it is you're trying to stop the team more times than they're trying to stop you. And
Yeah.
if you want to have success, I don't care what level it is, you have to care about defense. As a team, as an individual, as a coach, if you want to go anywhere in this game, you have to defend.
Yeah, and it has to be a mentality as well. I know. I mean, I don't have to go very far to understand it. You've coached my son, who is by definition an offensive player before a defensive player, and that's something he had to deal with this year. It's like, oh, I need to get better at that if I'm going to get on the floor, which is
that was the same for me. Yeah,
a lot of kids struggle with that, but you have to be okay with that and be ready to go. So let's start talking about what have you taken, and you've already given me a little bit, but how did you start making the transition from player to coach? And what'd you take with you? Yeah.
So I was kind of up in the air my senior year. I was trying to figure out what am I going to do after college. I had always thought, hey, I could get into coaching. I could get into college coaching. Maybe I could play overseas and have a career 5 years, 10 years, whatever it ends up being. And then get into coaching after that. But I think my college coach kind of made that decision for me. He offered me a spot as the director of operations on the bus ride home from our last game. We lost to East Tennessee State in the CIT tournament, the first round. So on the way back to campus, only like an hour and a half ride, he kind of came back and sat and talked to me about that, and and filling in that role and that being a good launching point for my coaching career. And I learned a ton that first year, just being behind the scenes and switching from viewing the game as a player to what do the coaches talk about in the coaches meetings? What are they really looking for? Like, how are they planning practices? How are they planning, week-long workouts? What are they looking for? What are they looking for offensively? What adjustments are we making in the middle of games or in the middle of the season to things like that you're never privy to as a player? Maybe once in a while you are, but being behind the scenes that first year, I really, really loved everything that went into coaching. And what really made me fall in love with that side of the game, really the planning, the preparation, which I loved as a player because I was always a really hard worker. I always made sure to get put a lot of time in on my game. But from the coaching aspect is a little bit different, where you're not wearing yourself out physically drained the way you are as a player. So it's a little bit easier. I feel like I can put even more time in as a coach, just watching film, scouting teams, scouting players, planning practices, workouts, all of those types of things. And I'm not physically drained and exhausted and have to lay down and take a nap.
Yeah. Well, sometimes. Yeah. I mean, you're still young, so yeah, but
going to bed at midnight.
What was when you switched that first year getting into director of basketball operations, what was the biggest aha moment that you're like, oh, coaches actually are thinking about this or actually working on this, and I didn't even think about that?
Man, that's a great question. I think there wasn't really an aha moment. It was just every day was just something like that. Like, I got thrown into the fire right away. I had to run our summer camp. And I thought that our assistant coach, who was there for only 1 year, but he was a great assistant for us. We really loved him my senior year. And he was supposed to run the summer camp. I went home after we graduated. They gave me about a month off. I came back in June and was going to help him run camp. Well, found out a week before that he took another job, got out of coaching. And then our coach, Coach Jackson, who's now the commissioner of the Missouri Valley, Jeff Jackson, he's like, hey, buddy, you're running summer camp. Coach Williams left. It's on you. Like, one of the other assistant coaches helped me get some stuff organized and from the things from last year and gave me some templates of what they did. But I had to plan summer camp. I had to get the dorms organized and get our players to, that were coaching the teams and that were staying in the dorms with the kids. I had to do all of it right from the jump my first week. So my eyes were opened right away to how much goes into coaching that you don't think about. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it feels a little like that sophomore year. You're on the bench, and next thing you know, somebody's got an injury, and you got to step up. It's
Right.
like
It was
it's the
exactly
same kind of an idea, right?
Yeah, it's just preparation. Like, are you ready when your time is called? Like, if I had that sophomore year, if I had just said, screw this, I'm not going to work hard because the coaches don't are not appreciating me and what I can do, and instead I worked hard and was ready for when my time came. I'm even as I'm coming off the bench, I'm still having good games. We still went to Notre Dame, and I had 12 or 14 at University of Notre Dame, an ACC school. So I'm still having good performances. I'm still working on my game. So when my time comes, and the same thing there, you got to be ready. It's the next man up mentality, and we have it right now at Metamora with Coach Greaves going through
Yeah.
some family difficulties, and it's just like, hey, he's been gone all summer, so I'm doing all the summer stuff, and I'm coaching us at every shootout and running all the summer camps and trying to make sure we don't miss a beat.
Yeah, and it's great. You never know when your opportunity's coming. You got to be ready for it. I think
Right.
that is a mentality. So we're gonna take a quick break, and when we want to get into that, you mentioned Coach Greaves. I really want to talk about this state run you guys have had, and again, the job of the assistant coach
Yeah.
in that situation. So we'll take a break, and we will be right back. As parents, we love to joke about how our kids have selective hearing. Talk about ice cream or Christmas presents, and they are all ears. But ask them to take the trash out or walk the dog, and suddenly it is like you do not exist. I know it may not seem like it, but your child hears your voice. Just make sure that your words are worth listening to. And now, to learn more, you can join me in my webinar on how to use praise to raise mentally tough athletes. It's a guide for parents, and you can learn proven tips that will cultivate a positive attitude and a growth mindset in your young athlete. So join me for the free webinar on August 28th, 2023 at 7 o'clock Central. Look for the link to register, and I hope to see you there. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Mettle Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount. Welcome back. Again, I'm here with Coach Justin Dehm of formerly with the Furman Paladins. That's a mouthful sometimes saying that. And now with the Metamora Redbirds as the assistant coach under Danny Greaves. And that's really what I want to get into. As I mentioned before, I think that I've done some head coaching, I've done some assistant coaching, and they're very, very different. But the assistant coach, sometimes you're the guy at the end of the bench, like getting the kids chin up and helping pick up the pieces mentally. And I think that the situation that you are in, Coach, being a new school guy, the kind of guy that would suggest yoga to a team, being that's very new school, but you're definitely under a very old school type guy in Danny Greaves, and it's definitely not to pick on one way or the other. But clearly something's working for you guys in the sense of your success. And I know that you'll say, oh, well, we got the athletes, but there's plenty of athletes out there that aren't getting state championships. So I just want to get a little bit of insight from you on how do you, the good cop, bad cop, and how you guys make that work at Metamora.
I think that's a way to put it. Good cop, bad cop. Coach Greaves, I've known him since I was probably 5 years old, maybe even before that. He was one of my first basketball coaches. He had a son the same age as me, and so we connected right away. And him and my dad became good friends when I was young, and they both coached us. But they both had the same. It was bad cop, bad cop. It was like you get screamed at by Coach Greaves, and then you get screamed at by my dad. But like just knowing him for so long, it was awesome for him to extend the offer when I moved back here after coaching in college for a year, and it's been just an amazing 10 years coaching at Metamora and learning so much from him on how to run a high school basketball program and how to do things the right way and how to motivate young kids and how to win games. has been awesome to learn from one of the best. A guy that should be in the Hall of Fame one day. He's got over 500 wins right now.
Yeah.
So I've just taken the approach to just be as natural as I can. I'm not a yeller and a screamer like my dad was. I think growing up as a young kid, playing under that kind of turned me off to that coaching style. Like I knew when I made a mistake. You didn't need to yell at me. Like that wasn't making it any better. That was just getting in my head and making me unable to move on past mistakes that I made, whether it was missing a shot, a free throw, turning the ball over, a missed assignment on defense, whatever it was. Like I never did well with coaches who just yelled and yelled and yelled and yelled and yelled. Like didn't really make me play worse, but I didn't play better. It was one of those things that I always struggled, especially being your father. So he was pretty hard on me when I was a kid, and it helped me a lot because it helped turn me into a perfectionist. It always wanting to do my best, never settling for just a mediocre performance, always making sure that I was always trying my best, playing my hardest every time I stepped on the court. That was one of the things that my dad really instilled in me, and Coach Greaves instilled in me when I was young. But in terms of just the good cop, bad cop, Coach Greaves came to Metamora, which never really had much success with basketball. It was a football school forever.
Absolutely.
They've been in tons of state championships. They've come in second place a ton. They've won a couple. So they've been such a successful program, one of the most successful programs in any sport in Illinois high school athletics. So he had to kind of revamp the basketball program, get kids to be more serious about it, take it more serious, put in more time in the off season than they were used to putting in. And it fit well with his personality. He's got several kids that are in the military, so he has a very militaristic style of leadership. It's very yes sir, no sir. It's no nonsense. It's a lot of coach-led instruction, coach-led activities, and I've been able to kind of fill in the gaps around him, and just with my personality being a lot different than his and having more of a fresh player's perspective, I was able to come in and kind of play off of him, and it's worked pretty well for us. It's evolved over the years to him giving me more and more responsibility and more, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, helping us, just kind of change the way we do practice and the way we coach and the way we approach games and the things that we do. Just I've had to slowly build up kind of that respect from Coach.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to me to understand that, because I'm watching you guys in the state championship this year, and I don't know what timeout. I mean, it was down to the wire that game, and I don't know what timeout it was, but it was definitely in the fourth quarter. And they pan over, and I see you're squatted down in front of the team, and you're all but leading the timeout at that point. Mm-hmm. And that is such a, I think that is, for you, the good cop and the younger guy, it's such a testament to Coach Greaves and him saying this is what they need right now and getting you in there. Mm-hmm. But clearly it probably didn't start that way. And that's, that you use that word evolved. Can you come up with any suggestion or any examples of you suggested something and it was like Coach Greaves giving you like are you crazy? Or is there anything like that?
Yeah, when I was the sophomore coach back in, let's say it's 2015, 2016 seasons, I kind of put in a new offense, which we kind of run now, is based around stuff that I learned in college. It's Princeton offensive system. Not all of it, but just little things that I always thought, hey, this would be really, really good at the high school level, especially if you have the right players. And tried to get, hey, coach, we put this in with our varsity team. We went 26-2 that year. We were 26-1 until losing in the sectional to Manual, who went on to get third in state, I think. It was a huge game. They just came out on top. But we tried to put in some of those things that my sophomore team used, but it was too late in the season. And the varsity guys just couldn't quite get it. But it was like I had been pushing for it, and then he finally started seeing, like, in the sophomore games, hey, you're getting wide open layups. What do you guys – this is the offense I've been trying to get you to put in. Like, it's going to generate a couple easy buckets a game. and fouls, and it's going to get us into the bonus, and we're going to get underneath out of bounds plays, which we have a lot of pretty good ones. But it takes time. You just pound the rock mentality. You just gotta keep banging away, keep banging away. You never know. Eventually, you're going to hit it, and it's all going to crumble.
Yeah.
Just kind of that, just stay with it mentality. Don't give up. Just keep trying to show what we can do, and then and kind of implemented it fully the next year when I became the varsity assistant. And I think Coach was dealing with some health difficulties about this time too. Was when he first got diagnosed with cancer, and so I was kind of like on my own for the summer at that point, and I started putting this stuff in, and it was working really well. And we didn't have a ton of talent that year, so we kind of had to be more system oriented, and kind of guys had to know exactly what we were doing on the floor. If there was too much freedom, it wasn't going to go well with our team that year. So it started with that, and it just kind of evolved from there. I slowly been able to get more and more responsibilities from Coach, and he trusted me more and more.
Yeah, and like I've said, it's clearly working for you guys because it's you've got a good system going. What about on any, because the old school, new school is more than just plays and out of bounds plays and things like that. What about like the way that you handle the athletes and the way their mentality, and like he's the very like you said, the military type, beat him down, but you're like how do you mesh there with Coach?
And a lot of Coach has been at a lot of schools that have a lot different clientele than Metamora. Like he's been down in poverty in Mississippi and Louisiana, but he's also been with $20,000 a year charter school, private school, boarding school in Mississippi. Like he's been at a lot of different, more often than not though, he's been in high poverty situations where he's kind of had to feel like he needed to have more control over the kids or they wouldn't listen to him. They'd run roughshod over him if he wasn't like a disciplinarian and a taskmaster. And so I think he's kind of evolved his coaching as well, just through talking with me and seeing how I handle the kids and how I approach the game and coaching differently with these guys, and just talking and saying, hey, we don't need to beat these guys down. We need to build their confidence up. These guys don't come from the same situation as the kids in Gulfport, Mississippi, who don't have some of his kids. He'd have to pick them up to go to practice. They didn't have a floor at home. They lived on a dirt floor. We don't have to treat these kids the same, and I think that's for all coaching, no matter socioeconomic status, but all kids are different. You have to figure out what motivates each kid. We do have some kids that respond really well still to getting yelled at and getting on them, and we still do that, and he takes control of that more than me. I'd be more so the positive. After a kid gets pulled for a mistake or something, I'm explaining to him what he needs to do better or what he didn't do better if he doesn't understand it already. A lot of times they understand what they did and why they came out, but just to help them. Okay, get over it. It's a mistake. We need you to be better in the second half or the second quarter. We need you better when you go back in there. We need to forget about that mistake. Everybody's going to get pulled if they do that too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting because you mentioned that you were the type of guy that yelling really didn't work for you. It certainly didn't motivate you, but what I'm picking up in is it didn't break you down, but it does some kids, right? Yeah. There are some kids that loud, abrasive type coaching actually makes them worse players. How do you have some examples of that you were able to, like, you got to be the guy that coaches this guy because he does not respond well to Coach Greaves?
No specific examples, but there's been definitely moments in time where it's like, Coach, relax a little bit. We really need that. Like he's always had kids miss a free throw short, and he's got to yell, come on, shoot it with more arch, or get your legs into it. And I'm like, Coach, that's not going to help him shoot the free throw better. You're just going to make him freeze and think about his body when he doesn't need to think about his shot. He just needs to shoot it. It's just like little things like that. It's just kind of been, moving the chain a little bit to, hey, well, we don't need to yell at guys for missing shots. They're not trying to miss those shots. Like, get on kids for lack of effort. Get on kids for not listening. When you're talking, not looking at you in the eyes, which is big for us. Not giving eye contact when we're in a huddle or something like that. Get on kids for something like that. So it's just kind of been changing when win. It's still like I'm going to raise my voice and I'm going to get on kids
Right.
occasionally. I think it there's more to it when it's not all the time. When it's all the time, kids just tune you out, which is what
Yeah,
I had a coach that would do that. You just
it's yeah, it's the white noise. You just become the background. I'll be honest. When I was doing a lot of coaching, that's before I got into all this, I did a lot of that, and you realize that they're not listening at some point,
yeah.
right? It's the static. They're not paying attention.
And to your point about the huddle in the state tournament, you might be talking about, we've had things over the years where we'll go into a time. We've had a couple really, really heated situations, and we came out of timeouts and we just did not execute. And I'm like, we're telling them too many things. We can't yell about all these mistakes that we made 2 or 3 or 4 plays ago. They don't even remember it. And then we're trying to tell them what we're going to do next time down the floor on offense and defense. And maybe here's our second set after that one. If we don't, and it's like we need to focus more and streamline what we're doing on our timeouts. And if we hadn't done a better job of that, maybe we don't come out of there with a state championship, because that timeout at the end of regulation, we pretty much knew how Simeon was lined up in their box set on a side out of bounds play. We pretty much knew what they were going to run because we were in that same situation last year against them in the semifinals.
Right.
And they ran the play that everybody loves: cross screen for one guy on the block for the other guy to the corner, and then elevator screen to the top, which they tried against us last year and didn't work. And so we called the timeout, and we were saying, hey, this is what they're going to do. Same thing we did last year. And our guys, because they've been with us, they've been through so much. I mean, losing on a buzzer beater in the state championship the year before, I mean, that motivates you. That gets you to listen. That gets your attention. That develops and instills mental toughness in you. You've been through. There's nothing that they're ever going to experience in the game of basketball that's going to be worse than that moment. But being able to take the coaching from the huddle that we talked about, and right before that, we had 4 fouls to give, and we had to make sure, hey, we're going to take a foul after their first dribble. Let them get it in, let them look, put the ball on the floor, take a foul. Take it back out, same thing. Put it on the floor, take another foul. And we've had situations in the past where we did not execute that. 2018, we go to the super sectional, playing up at Northern Illinois, up on that crazy floor where it's like black, except for the college 3 and in is like the regular floor, the regular
right.
floor. And we had 2 instances in that game where we hit a 3 with a foot on the college line, but was called a 2. Unfortunately, the last one that happened was with 5 seconds to go in the game. We were down 2. We hit what should have been a 3 to put us up 1 to probably win and send us to state. And then a ref came in from the side and said it was a foot on the line. It was clearly on the college line, not the high school line, and stopped them. And our kids were just so distraught in that timeout. Maybe we didn't handle it well enough. We didn't really refocus them on what they needed to do. Maybe they weren't mentally tough enough at that point. And we had 2 fouls to give, and we said, okay, we got to keep playing the game. There's nothing we can do. We should have won that game. Instead, they put 5 seconds on the clock. The other team had the ball. They had to go full court. We had 2 fouls to give. You shouldn't lose. But we didn't foul. We let them take 2 dribbles. They threw it down court, and they swished a 3 to win the game, and we didn't get to go that year. We should have been our school's first trip to state, but sometimes things don't work out the way you want, and we learned from that. I think we learned to approach, and we can still bring that up to kids today and say, you don't want to be that group. You want to be locked in the huddle. You want to be focusing on what the plan is coming out of this timeout.
I think that's such a good point that we're talking about. This was 2018, right?
Yep.
And you finally got the state championship in 2023. Those are not the same kids,
no.
Right? But but you are developing that culture of learning as a staff, even.
Absolutely.
So because you don't want to make that same mistake, which I think is just phenomenal. And what I'm hearing a whole lot of is, I love to work with athletes on the idea of focusing on what you can control. Mm-hmm. And I think that you're right. I've heard a lot of things. You're talking about that poor decision by the official, which happens. Or talking about, we just made this mistake and working on that in a huddle. Well, that's not really something we can work on that in practice next week, but it doesn't help us in this timeout.
Yep.
And I think that you guys as a staff being able to get past that and start saying, here's what we need to focus on. I just love that idea of really focusing on what you can control.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you had a guest on yesterday's podcast. I don't know when you recorded it, but I listened to it yesterday with the referee or the
Yeah.
baseball umpire, which was really, really good. And it's something that we've always struggled with, like especially Coach Greaves as being as fiery as he is, being as
Right.
demanding as he is. He expects he expects the officials to be really good each
Right.
game too, and it's like they're not going to be. And one of the things we've started telling our kids, and it's like these are not NBA refs. They're not pros.
No.
They're not in tip top shape. A lot of them are in the opposite shape. And they're doing this because they love the game, they want to be around the game, and they want to make a little bit extra money on the side. You should not expect them to get all the calls right. And so we tell our kids, like, more of an incentive for us to practice harder and to play harder, because there could be a 10-point swing each game one way or the other based on what calls they see or don't see, what fouls you get called, or you may be in foul trouble. Hey, all the more reason not to reach on defense, because you may get a couple bad calls. But that one where you could have taken away by not reaching or trying to block a shot instead of just keeping your hands straight up, that might be the one that gets you in foul trouble. And I'm going to say, we know the refs are going to give you a bad foul every game. It's going to happen. So you have to control what you can control and try to be 10 points better. We got to take care of the ball better. We're not going to make all of our shots. We miss free throws. The officials are going to miss calls.
Control the controllables and let everything else go. And it's really hard. And I've found it's for athletes, it's a source of a lot of the pressure and anxiety when they start to focus on things they can't control.
Absolutely.
And that goes with coaches' decisions as well. When you're talking about when you had to get over that, like the only way I can affect the coach's decision on whether I get to play is get better. And that's it. I can't control anything else. So
You'll never
let's
be able to do anything with the officials. You'll never. I mean, they've never changed one call as many games as I've played or coached. Not one time did they change a call because I felt like they messed up. You know, it's just one of those things. You got it. It's part of the game, and I still struggle with it to this day, because sometimes I feel like, gosh, these officials have no idea how much time we put in, and then I struggle with when they won't actually just have a conversation with you. I just want to help you, because I watch my kids all the time, and I know that's not a travel. I know that kid makes that move all the time, and he practices it and works on it. We work on it with him, and it's just one of those things that frustrates you. You know what I mean? But you have to. When the coaches focus on that too much, then the players focus on it. And
you took the words out of my mouth. That's what I was going to say. I think that I've never seen an official change a call because you complained, but I've definitely seen a team, a player, a team, and even a culture and an organization start to switch whenever you focus on that stuff too much.
Yep.
It's just not worth the benefit, which there really isn't much benefit for. And I get it. You gotta advocate. You gotta stand up for your guys. But it's hard. But it's really not much use. So that's the end of segment 2 with Coach Dehm. I've got another segment from that interview coming up next week. But for now, after the break, come back and I'll have a little bit of a breakdown on those segments and some of the stuff I really picked up from Coach Dehm's playing career and just some of the new school ideas that he's worked in. Catch you after the break. As parents, we love to joke about how our kids have selective hearing. Talk about ice cream or Christmas presents, and they are all ears. But ask them to take the trash out or walk the dog, and suddenly it is like you do not exist. I know it may not seem like it, but your child hears your voice. Just make sure that your words are worth listening to. And now, to learn more, you can join me in my webinar on how to use praise to raise mentally tough athletes. It's a guide for parents, and you can learn proven tips that will cultivate a positive attitude and a growth mindset in your young athlete. So join me for the free webinar on August 28th, 2023 at 7 o'clock Central. Look for the link to register, and I hope to see you there. Less than 1% of high school athletes ever become professional athletes.
But as parents, we invest in their athletic pursuits because we know it's worth it. Sports build vital life skills. Confidence, perseverance, and the joy they bring are invaluable lessons from sports. But what if your athlete is facing the other side? What if anxiety, apathy, and sorrow have replaced the joy? Well, I can help. My name is Matt Tillman, and I am a certified mental coach. And I understand the challenges young athletes face. I've seen mental coaching transform the mindset of many young athletes. It's not about turning them into pros, but nurturing their inner strength for sports and for life. At Mental Metal Coaching, we offer virtual sessions to help them tackle challenges, build confidence, and rediscover the joy of sports. Every young athlete deserves to thrive. Mental Metal Coaching, facing adversity with a smile.
Welcome back to the Mental Middle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Tillman, and here to do a little breakdown on that interview with Metamora Redbirds state champion assistant coach Justin Dehm, and just some of his story growing up in Central Illinois and heading into play some Division I ball. And I love so much he is a great example of how to handle adversity in college as an athlete. It is a lot of the athletes I work with whenever they go into college, you go from the absolute stud from your high school and you have to go into college and you find out that there's a lot of people like you. I wouldn't say a lot of people, but they're all in the same place and they're all on that basketball team, and your competition are people like you. And that is difficult for a lot of kids. And it was especially different and difficult for Coach Dehm because he started out his first year and he was a starter, and that was his first year. It was his most points per game, and he went from being a starter to being a bench player, and that is very difficult. And I loved how it didn't break him down, but it motivated him. And what I picked up from from the coaching stuff and all the things I've worked on is just his idea of how he had that growth mindset. He exhibited so many ideas of the growth mindset. If you haven't read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, she's a psychologist that really talks about the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and just how important it is and how it drives individuals, or if you don't have the right mindset, it breaks down individuals. But what I noticed is in the connection between his growth mindset and how that led into some of these new school ideas. And I'll explain. So growth mindset is about driving your progress. So growth mindset is understanding your abilities and knowing that they are not fixed and that you can do something about it. So growth mindset in the book, when Dweck talks about it, it's things like even intelligence and musical ability and athletic ability. A lot of times in kids, we see that as a fixed thing, and it's not a fixed thing. It is a genetic thing, and some kids come in with more than others, but it is not fixed, and it can be changed and it can get better. And he exhibited this growth mindset in college when he had to go from, he went from a starter to a bench player, and a fixed mindset would see that as an attack and things like, well, I'm not getting any better, and I'm not good enough, and that's it. And I guess coach likes somebody else. He brought in some other people, and a lot of players at that point would quit. Oh, but a growth mindset sees that as information, sees it as an invitation to get better. So a growth mindset takes criticism, it takes failure, and again, uses that as information. Take the personal side of it, the part that makes you mad, the part makes you upset, and gets rid of it and says, what's the information I can use there? And a growth mindset also takes the success of someone else and uses it as information. He saw new players coming in that actually helped the program, and you see what their abilities are, and you say, okay, they're good. How can I make myself better? and, use their abilities and your situation and learn as much information as you can to get better. And this is where the new school idea comes in. It's when you see, I need to get better. How am I going to do that? I might have to do things in a different way. My current way isn't getting me yield me the results I want. I need a new idea to get something better. And his idea there, I love so much that he talked about yoga. He saw that he needed to get quicker and faster. He was already a shooter. He was a scorer, but he needed to play defense, and he needed to get those abilities. He did not see his speed and quickness as fixed. He said, I want to go and I want to make them better. Well, I need an idea to do that. Well, how do I do that? He saw that the pros were working with yoga and decided to use that to get quicker and faster, to get more playing time. And yeah, I don't know. I mentioned in the interview, but yoga is hard, really, really hard. I do some things that are hard on purpose. I practice some jujitsu, and I like to run, and I like to lift, but I've tried some yoga, and it's hard. I don't like it. I probably ought to do it, and I should do it, but it's to think, oh, well, it's this soft way to do that. No, it's hard. It's very hard. And you heard him talk about that in the interview. It's difficult for the kids, and a lot of them are tapping out and they don't want to do it, and it's hot. But now he makes the team do it. He's incorporated it into part of their fall conditioning. And that's a new school idea. That's hey, we needed to get better at something. Let's do that. And I think he did that with and it took years. And kudos to Coach Danny Greaves, as I have mentioned, is an old school type guy. But to listening to some of those ideas that Coach Dehm is bringing in, they changed some of their offense. They changed some of the way they practice, incorporating yoga. And it's so, again, it's a testament to the program, Coach Greaves, Coach Dehm, for them to work together and make improvements in the program. And I would say that the one thing about being old school is it's fine if you want to be the disciplinarian and you think that that's your best way and you like to gain that respect, and it's fantastic. And I think that that is something you need to do. However, I don't think you can never be so old school that you don't listen to new ideas. Saying that's the way we've always done it is just not a great idea. It's just not good practice. So that's the point. You can be an old school coach, but always be willing to listen and be willing to change. So next time on the podcast, we're going to have part 2 of the interview. And as you know, Coach Dehm has already mentioned some of the stories of the team, but in next week, we dive into his story about losing the state championship in 22 and then having to come back with expectations and living up to those expectations and getting that state trophy in 2023, and just how they had to keep working and keep, improving to do that. Also, don't forget, I mentioned it at the beginning. Don't forget my webinar coming up on August 28th, 7:00. The link's in the show notes. It's how to praise and raise mentally tough athletes. And there are some ideas in that webinar that fit right in with what Coach Dehm talked about today. When we discussed about refs and how to handle bad calls, in the webinar, I'll give some stats. I'll give some pointers that are going to help you not be the parent that gets overly passionate about the efficacy of the officiating whenever your kid is playing. I'll put it that way. And spoiler alert here, complaining to your officials does not increase your child's mental toughness. It does the opposite, and I'll explain that in detail in the webinar. So I would love it if you join me for that webinar on August 28th, how to raise and praise mentally tough athletes. Until next time, this has been the Mental Metal Podcast, and I'm your host, Coach Matt Toman. Thanks again for listening to the Mental Metal Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media. Sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play. And by Mental Mettle Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Mettle Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Mettle Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your mettle.